Hello, I'm meteorologist Don Luers, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Weather Awareness. Weather always a big, heavy topic across the PD, but one other topic has been kind of stealing the show recently. That, of course, is the coronavirus, or COVID-19, and we have somebody here to talk about that a bit. Jay Pruitt, someone with Agape Hospice, and we'll be talking about Agape Hospice and Hospice Care of South Carolina in a bit more detail coming up in a moment. But first, to cover the coronavirus, Jay, that's really been a heavy topic all across the PD here in Dillon and Marion counties. We've been not quite as hard hit as other parts of South Carolina, but still have had our share.
Right.
From the hospice side, how have you seen this virus play out?
Well, the first thing, Don, that we're trying to do is make sure that we protect those patients that we currently have on service. And how are we doing that? That's by making sure that our staff is well protected, that they're well, and they're not able to transmit anything to our current patients. You know, if they're going into facilities, coming out of facilities, they are using the proper PPE as described by the CDC. So making sure that we are protected to protect our current residents.
Exactly right. You brought up facilities, and that's really been a hot spot with the virus across much of the country. Once it gets a foothold in, and of course the population within that facility is going to be elderly and vulnerable. But in Dillon and Marion County so far, we've been able to do a good job of doing exactly what you said, kind of keep it locked out of the facility. And the facilities have done a great job of controlling who comes in and who comes out. But on the hospice side, with those facilities, how exactly has that interaction been done? From what I've seen, the trust between the hospice and the facilities has been really good.
Yeah, it has to be. The facilities from the early onset of the coronavirus, the COVID-19, has laid out what their guidelines are going to be. How many staff members can come in to take care of those hospice residents, how long they can stay, making sure that they're gowned up, they have their face shields and everything on. There have been cases where facilities are not allowing any of the hospice personnel to be in there. So you ask, how are they caring for those patients? They're making sure that they're following up with the facility nurses every single day. They are going out for any end-of-life needs or any, PRN or things that are like a cold or pain or anything like that. But just making sure that we adhere to what the facilities want. And they were able to give that to us fairly early on in this process.
And of course, most of the hospice patients being helped in Dillon and Marion counties aren't in facilities. They're in their own residential home or living with their family or even by themselves. How has the virus been handled as far as those type of settings?
Well, it's very similar to the facilities. We are making sure, first of all, that the patients are comfortable with our staff going in. If they're not comfortable having somebody there, because we're trying to keep the cross-contamination down. We don't want to expose them to anything. So making sure that the proper PPE is provided for all of our nurses, our CNAs, chaplains, but we're starting with a phone call. In many cases, that's what they get as a phone call. When there is a need for pain and end of life, like I stated with the facilities, the same protocol is being followed. But making sure that that family and that patient stay away from COVID-19.
Exactly, and that's actually been the same thing I've seen with so many doctors that I've talked to and have relationships with. They're doing a lot of their patient care by telephone and by teleconference and so forth. So it's kind of universal across the whole health field, I think. Switching gears a bit, I mentioned, Jay, with Agape Hospice. I've been with Hospice Care of South Carolina for going on 10 years now, and you've been with Agape for about that same length of time.
About that.
But we're actually partners now.
Absolutely, glad to be.
Agape Hospice and Hospice Care of South Carolina joining teams and combining into one. Talk a bit about the status of that, where that's at.
Sure. Probably over the course of about 6 months ago, we had been hearing rumors about that, for quite a few months before, but we finally became one organization, as we refer to it now as NUCO.
Right.
So Agape Hospice and Hospice Care of South Carolina are now one. We are currently in the middle of blending all of those operations together. Hospice Care of South Carolina and Agape Hospice have large footprints in the state of South Carolina. So you can imagine bringing all that together would not be something that would happen overnight. So we've luckily started with the sales team. Everyone's coming together there. Soon we'll follow our clinical and operations team, and then we will be able to utilize the resources that we have, the best of both worlds, to serve these great counties that we have.
Yeah, and I've been really thrilled to see how that blending has been going on. It's been really encouraging to see how smoothly it's all gone and how beneficial it's been.
Absolutely.
I've known about Agape Hospice obviously for a long time, and by having some of the strong aspects of Agape and the strong aspects of Hospice Care South Carolina come together, I think it's going to just be
It's going to be
beautiful.
great. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. And also, it was kind of neat seeing about how similar we were. Very much the same size of company. For example, Hospice Care South Carolina has recently been handling about 700 patients and families out there, and Agape,
Same.
turns out, I didn't know exactly, but it's exactly the
Right,
same, more or
same.
less. So now we're just kind of two all blended into one. So
Absolutely.
it's been great.
So we use the strengths from each one. I mean, where Hospice Care of South Carolina is strong and Agape may not have been, now we're together, we can be strong everywhere and serve more people throughout the state.
Very good. Now, going forward, switching one more time back to the coronavirus, how do you see this playing long term? I guess eventually I hope there's a vaccine and just kind of goes into the background and is not really a big topic a couple years down the road. But between now and then, we still got a long transition.
We do.
How long do you think that's going to wind down before things are, people say, when's it going to be normal again?
Right.
I guess that might be a while.
Yeah, I guess, and you were right to do normal in air quotes, because I don't know that there will be a normal as we knew back in August.
Right.
It will be a new normal. How we access our physicians may become more like telehealth. For just routine checkups and things like that. I don't know. There's no way to really say. We see the certain communities opening up and certain states opening up slowly, but you don't see many of the physicians' offices, facilities opening up quite at that same speed because they're protecting their patients and their residents. So I look for that to eventually open, but not really sure of a timeline for that. So what we're going to do, you and I, Don, are going to do for Hospice Care of South Carolina and Agape Hospice, we're going to adhere to what they want, and we're going to continue to try to serve them best way we can. And that may be via the telephone or email. I don't know. But so new normal is what I'm kind of looking for. We'll see.
Right. I'm curious how it turns out in all sorts of ways. Being a big football fan, I'm wondering how that's going to work out.
I don't know. My Gamecocks are supposed to be good this year, too. I don't know.
Everything's on a kind of a wait and see
That's right.
I guess.
That's right.
But good to have you as a
Thank you for
team
having
member.
me. Absolutely.
And glad
Looking
to have
forward
you
to
with
it.
us.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Jay Pruitt with Agape Hospice and now also Hospice Care of South Carolina. We'll be right back after this. If you are in the market for a car, truck, or SUV, you have to check out Parker's Used Cars. Parker's Used Cars is on Highway 38 South in Blenheim, located between Latta and Bennettsville. Tommy Parker, the owner, has built his reputation by selling high-quality vehicles for 29 years. You won't believe the selection. You'll have over 600 cars, trucks, and SUVs to pick from. Check them out online at parkersautos.com. That's parkersautos.com. Or call them at 843-528-3301. Parker's Used Cars in Blenheim, Highway 38. And welcome back to Weather Awareness, kicking full speed now into spring and summer across Dillon and Marion counties. Of course, that means you're out in your garden, trying to get your gardens and lawns back into tip-top shape. And to help us do that, Callan Newton with the Clemson Extension Service is joining us. Callan, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Always good to see you and talk to you. And this time of year, people are usually a little stir-crazy coming out of wintertime, going into springtime. But this year we're extra stir-crazy because we've had all this virus stuff going on and kind of been forced home and not being able to do much. So people are finding an outlet in the yard, in the garden, and finding they're spending more time out there than they've ever had the opportunity to do before. So I bet you're getting more calls than you usually get.
Yes, sir. So actually gardening is at its all-time high right now.
I bet it is.
More people are gardening than ever before, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing, and it relies on the weather, of course.
It does.
Folks need that good weather to have a good, successful garden. You can augment it with your watering and so forth, but still you need to trust the weather to give you the right amount of sunshine and to keep the frost away and things like that. What kind of questions are you getting from all of these folks who may be dabbling in gardening for the first time in a long time?
So I'm getting a lot of questions about weed ID. What is this weed and how to control it? Anybody can either email me or call me and I can work through it. Or you can always visit the Home and Garden Information Center at Clemson. It's hgic.clemson.edu, and they have great fact sheets and wonderful pictures that help homeowners identify weeds.
Oh, that's great, because people are out there wondering what this and that is, and some folks are even wondering, should I pull it, or is that supposed to be there? You know, they're not even really sure if it's a weed or not. So that's really encouraging the folks to know that helps that accessible. Tell us about why the Clemson Extension Service is even there. I think it's a pretty neat thing.
Yes, so every state has a land-grant university. Some states have two, like South Carolina, Clemson University and SC State. And they're a land-grant university, which means we provide unbiased research to homeowners and farmers and the citizens throughout the state. And we do have an office in all 46 counties, which is nice. A lot of people don't realize that, but we're here, and we're here for you to help you with anything that you may need.
Exactly right, and it's good to hear that your phone's been busy and that people are utilizing that, because it is a great service, and luckily it's been I think pretty highly received in Dillon and Marion County, so that's always a good thing. One thing that the Extension Service has been part of over the years is the famous Dillon Tomato Contest.
Yes, sir.
And I've been hearing different things out there. There is going to be one, there's not going to be one, this or that, because of all this COVID-19 or coronavirus issue going on. So you're going to be in the know. What's the bottom line on the tomato contest?
So this year's going to be a little bit different. We will still have the contest, and we'll have an adult category and a youth category, which is 18 and younger. And so this year, because of the coronavirus and we can't meet and celebrate like we normally do, we will not have our annual banquet at the end of June, but we will still be judging your tomatoes and announcing the winners.
Okay, so there's bragging rights contest,
Yes,
more or
yeah.
less.
A little different this year, but we hope next year we'll be back to normal.
I hope so too. I really do. But nonetheless, you will have a chance to grow your tomato, enter your tomato, and try to win the contest.
Yes, sir.
So folks that want to do that, what's going to be the process of doing that?
So this year, they'll, instead of coming to the office and paying an entry fee and let me know you want to sign up for the contest, you can just call my office number. It's 843-627-7113. Or you can email me at callanb@clemson.edu and get an entry form, and I can either mail it to you or email it to you. And that's just letting me know your name, what category you're going to be in, and the address of where your tomatoes will be, so myself and the other two judges can come judge your tomatoes.
Very good. And when they're judged, are they judged on the vine or are they judged already picked?
They're judged on the plant themselves. So we're looking at the quality. Is there any insects and diseases? How many tomatoes are actually on your plant? Do you have none, or is your plant really looking good and loading down with some nice juicy tomatoes? And we're also looking for your cultural practices. Do you just let your bush grow, or are you pruning them? Things like that.
Okay. So you're judging the tomato, but also the skill and the effort behind the tomato. Okay, good to know. Now, speaking of the garden and out there, you're mentioning that you've been getting some questions and concerns about disease prevention and things like that. What are some tips you can help us? Because some people say everything was going great, and all of a sudden this happened.
Right,
things were going great, all of a sudden that happened. How can you try to prevent those issues?
So a lot of the times, a lot of diseases like powdery mildew comes down to watering. Have you been watering your plant? Are you watering it too much? Are you overhead watering, where you're watering the leaves and the leaves are getting wet and not so much the roots? And that really helps promote powdery mildew, which you don't want.
So if you're watering, you don't want to water with the shower hose. You want to You want to shower.
If you do have a hose or a water breaker on the end of your hose, you can still use that. That's perfectly fine. But just don't go out there and spray the water everywhere. Try to get down as close to the roots as possible, and that'll also help prevent any disease spread between your plants when the water's splashing around from plant to plant.
I gotcha. That makes good sense. And how about recommendations on tools and things like that?
Oh, very important thing to do is cleaning your tools in the garden. Hose down your shovels, especially your pruning shears when you're going from plant to plant. You want to make sure they're sanitized, and you can do that with a 70% isopropyl alcohol. Just spray it down, wipe it off, or a 1:9 Clorox to water ratio.
Very good.
And that'll help prevent disease spread between plants.
Good. And any recommendations on the insects or things like that could also get in there?
Right. So not every insect is a bad insect. We have lots of native pollinators, our bees. You can also think of your wasps, your hornets, your moths, your butterflies. So just because you see an insect in your garden does not mean it's a bad insect.
It might be your best friend, right?
It might be your best friend, yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up because I've been hearing something about a killer hornet or an Asian hornet.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be huge and everyone's scared they're going to come and kill all the bees.
So
What's going on with that?
Yeah, this past weekend there was an article that came out about this murder hornet, and everybody's been freaking out about it. It's safe to say on the East Coast in South Carolina, we do not have to worry about this Asian giant hornet. That's the actual name of this hornet.
Okay.
6 months ago, one dead hornet was found in Washington State, but there have
Washington State.
Yeah, Washington
all the way
State.
to West Coast.
Yeah, about
Okay.
3,000 miles away.
Okay.
There have been colonies in Vancouver and British Columbia, but those are in Canada. So officials are being on the lookout in Washington State for this Asian giant hornet, and it's about 2 inches long and about
Wow.
yeah, pretty
that
big.
is big.
Yeah, and it's 5 times bigger than our native honeybee. And the name murder hornet kind of makes you a little bit nervous, but it really will not affect us as humans. We would probably get stung by our native wasp or yellow jackets before we ever would this Asian giant hornet. But the concern everybody really has is for the beehives. The Asian giant hornets have an extra tough exoskeleton, and the bees aren't able to sting the hornet, so they can come in and totally destroy a beehive.
Wow. Now, long term, is there any risk of this slowly spreading across the country? Is there a way to stop that? Or
So there's the Department of Plant Industries in each state. They go through and have the different monitoring programs where they watch for these invasive species, and they have those already set up in Washington and as well as South Carolina and every state between here and in the between. So everybody's on the lookout for it. But in South Carolina, we're about 3,000 miles away from this Asian giant hornet, so we should be good for a long time to come.
it shouldn't be your top worry, right?
No, definitely
good.
not.
Very good. Well, happy growing season. Hope you have lots of entries in the tomato contest.
Me too.
And it's going to be exciting to see how things turn out, and we'll come back and talk about it when it does. Okay?
All right, sounds good.
Very good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back after this. If you are in the market for a car, truck, or SUV, you have to check out Parker's Used Cars. Parker's Used Cars is on Highway 38 South in Blenheim, located between Latta and Bennettsville. Tommy Parker, the owner, has built his reputation by selling high-quality vehicles for 29 years. You won't believe the selection. You'll have over 600 cars, trucks, and SUVs to pick from. Check them out online at parkersautos.com. That's parkersautos.com. Or call them at 843-528-3301. Parker's Used Cars in Blenheim, Highway 38. And welcome back. Johnny Luers, president of the Dillon County Chamber of Commerce, is joining us right now and talking a bit about another impact from the coronavirus across Dillon and Marion counties. Of course, that's been all sorts of events and different festivities planned across the area, plus the general business. What can you tell us about slowly easing back in and maybe getting back toward what we'd like to be?
Okay, thank you, John. Well, first of all, as you know, the virus caused us to have to cancel and postpone a lot of different things.
Exactly.
But slowly, as you were saying, we're opening back and getting to a new normal. That's something we're going to all have to adjust to for a little while. It's going to be interesting to see how many of the things we've learned during this pandemic that we're able to carry through, like our distance and shaking hand and hugging and things like this, how reserved we might be. But let's go back to some of our festivals. Our first festival was scheduled for the third Saturday in April in Latta, and that has been postponed to the third Saturday of April in 2021, okay?
So Latta Spring Fest will just be put off till next
Till the
year.
next year, right.
Okay.
With Dillon, we had to postpone ours, but we're going to have it on August the 15th, the third Saturday in August. So it's going to continue as planned with the car show and the vendors and the area for the children. It's going to have a different look a little bit this year too. All the food vendors are going to be in one location, and the other vendors and the children are going to be separated from them. They'll still be all in the street like we've had in the past, but it's going to have just a little bit of a different look.
Right on Main Street in Dillon.
Right on Main Street in Dillon, so please continue with that. Our gyms are starting to open back up. Our offices within the city and the county are going to continue to open back up. We're all opening up slowly, as you have said. One thing that has been going on that we just had this month was the reopening of the farmers market. And so we're very pleased about that. We were able to have 9 vendors this past week. We had, it will always be the second Monday of each month from June through October. The first month we had, like I said, we had 9 vendors. 5 of them were vendors that were able to sell produce and different items. And then we had 3 nonprofits and of course the Dillon County Health Initiative. So we're glad that people came out for that. They were getting ready to get out some, but everybody was very conscious of the social distancing, and I think that is something that we're going to see for a while.
Yeah, I had a chance to be out there and take part in that, and it was a really well-attended event, I thought. I was wondering how many people would come out, and I was real happy to see that many people did come out, but like you said, respected people's space, and a lot of people wearing the mask, and it was good to see. Again, the hours of the farmers market?
The farmers market will be from 4 to 7 p.m. the second Monday of each month, starting in May and going all the way through October.
Okay, second Monday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Very good. Anything else we need to discuss?
Our Palmetto Leadership class is finishing up for 2020. Applications will be ready within 3 days. For the 2021 class, we only have anywhere from 10 to 12 in the class, so be on the lookout for that. And this class really started off with a bang, and I will say they ended with a bang.
Yes, they did. And with the coronavirus kind of disrupting their plans a little bit, but you made the best of it, and that's what everyone's got to learn how to do that, I guess.
That's one thing with true leaders, they're able to adjust.
That's right. Well, thank you, John Ewers.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you again for joining us for this edition of Weather Awareness. One more episode coming up. We're going to take a look at hurricane season, the forecast for this upcoming year. If you are in the market for a car, truck, or SUV, you have to check out Parker's Used Cars. Parker's Used Cars is on Highway 38 South in Blenheim, located between Latta and Bennettsville. Tommy Parker, the owner, has built his reputation by selling high-quality vehicles for 29 years. You won't believe the selection. You'll have over 600 cars, trucks, and SUVs to pick from. Check them out online at parkersautos.com. That's parkersautos.com. Or call them at 843-528-3301. Parker's Used Cars in Blenheim, Highway 38. And one last thought before we wrap up the show. I do want to give you an update on the hurricane forecast for this upcoming season. Of course, hurricane season generally runs from June 1st through November 30th. And the peak time of hurricane season will be especially during August and September. But any time from here on out will be fair game for tropical storms or hurricanes to form. Now, the forecast for the Atlantic Basin is for an active year. And by the Atlantic Basin, I mean the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. All told, we do expect an above normal number of storms. The Colorado State team that actually forecast the whole season ahead of time is forecasting 16 named storms across the Atlantic Basin this year. Now, in a normal season or an average season, we'd have 12 named storms. So that's a good bit above normal for the total number of storms. Of those storms, we expect about 8 to become hurricanes. And of those 8 hurricanes, probably about half or 4 will be major hurricanes, category 3, 4, or 5. So if all those numbers come to fruition, the risk will be higher than normal for landfalls across the Grand Strand, and especially if you look at the entire coast of the U.S. coast. So keep that in mind going through hurricane season. It likely is going to be an active year. Now, every year you need to prepare as if that year would be a threatening year for us, because even in a slow season, someone usually ends up getting hit. If that was to be us, you would still want to be prepared. So what should you be doing at this time? Well, there's plenty of things you can do ahead of time before there's any storms out there to make sure you and your family are safe this hurricane season. One of the first things you want to do is verify your insurance, making sure that your insurance policies are in good effect and you're fully covered for everything you think could be in danger if a storm was to come our way, either by flood, or by wind and hail damage. Also, we want to cover the family plan. What are you going to do if a hurricane does come our way? Get your family together, make sure everyone's aware of the plan and has their part kind of worked out so they'll be able to fall into place without the panic if a storm does come our way. Finally, begin to restock your hurricane kit. That means loading up on the water and the batteries and things like that to get through a storm safely. And if a storm does come our way, put those final pieces in it toward the end, prescription medicines and money and things that you might want to make sure you have on hand if a storm is actually coming. And lastly, you might want to go around your property, especially right around your home, and make sure you don't have any trees that need to come down or branches that need to come down. There could be a potential hazard if high winds from a hurricane did come our way. So plenty of things you can do ahead of time to prevent safety or panic when the storm does come our way. Bottom line, though, is in any type of severe weather, hurricane or even just your average thunderstorm, you want to make sure you stay weather aware. That means having a good, reliable phone app on your phone so any watches or warnings that do come in come to you immediately. Well, that's it for this edition of Weather Awareness. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you again next time.